I'm going to give you guys 23 tips and tricks to win more solo queue games. Let's waste no time. The first tip is stop fighting early. Focus on the farm and score in your lane. This is the #1 mistake I see people make. Early game, they're focusing way too much on killing the enemy rather than using their skills or whatever to secure the farm, making sure they're getting their farm and getting the score when the enemy leaves their base. Tip #2 is if you're playing tank or support, put an experience share as one of your held items. If you're playing this character to carry, then use another character. Use an experience share on your tanks and supports and make sure you've only got one experience share per lane. Tip #3, if somebody wants to jungle and you've pulled jungle, just go to a lane and win your lane. Guys, #1 way to lose a game of Pokemon Unite, it tilts your whole team, is when everybody sees that you're fighting for the jungle with someone else. Just go to your lane, win your lane. Person who takes the jungle off you will probably be grateful and they'll come to gank your lane. Tip #4, know when to give up a goal zone. If the enemy are pushing you hard, you need to learn to just let the enemy score, back out, eat your berries, and let them do what they're doing there, right? You standing there and dying, all that does is gives them extra experience and gives them extra money to score. So you're compounding your loss. You need to know if you're gonna die, walk away. Tip #5, if you play a defender, be in front of your attackers. I see this time and time and time again. The attackers are having to frontline, they're having to scout bushes. That's the role of the defender, while the defender, the Lapras or something, is just sitting back. Guys, if you're playing defender or even a tanky support, make sure you're providing vision for your team because that's part of your role. Tip #6, have your Unite move ready at the RayFight. Now, this has become less of an issue as time has gone on. However, I still see this when it's the start of the season and generally you're playing with some people who maybe aren't up to the skill level as you until you're hitting Masters. The amount of people I see not having their Unite move ready for Rayquaza is just, it's unacceptable. This is the big fight. This is the make or break. You can make sure you've got every resource available to win that fight. Tip #7, use your skills to secure farm. The amount of people I see using their skills to damage the farm and then the enemy comes along and uses their skill to secure their farm is a disgrace, right? Make sure you're using your skills to secure the farm. It does the most burst damage, right? So you need to make sure you're doing that. Tip #8, learn to defend your goal zone if the enemy are pushing it instead of going for your back Baltoy, right? The little experience you're going to get from the back Baltoy versus the amount of score they're getting in, especially if they're scoring more than 10 points, you need to be defending your goal zone if the enemy are trying to push it rather than taking that Baltoy. You get a little bit of experience, great. The enemy close the score gap or they extend their score lead. They're also getting more experience than you by securing that Baltoy. So you're at a net loss by securing that Baltoy. Please stop doing this, guys. Learn to defend your goal zones. #9 is to like the video and subscribe to this channel if you're getting any value from this video. It's taken me a little bit of time to put together as well as editing and all that good stuff. So if you're getting some value, the YouTube algorithm absolutely froths a bit of a like, and I'm always a big fan of seeing that subscribe number. So if you're getting some value, show me a bit of love. Tip #10 is to be careful when you are scoring after your team has secured the Rayquaza. The amount of games that I've lost because my teammates just run in blindly to try and score, you're not invincible, you have a big shield. That's a really valuable shield and it increases your scoring, but if that shield gets popped, then you're likely not going to be able to get your score in because you don't have any score shield. So just be careful when you secure or your team secures the Rayquaza. You're not invincible, you've still got to be playing smart to get that score in. So if the enemies are alive, have some map awareness of where you think they might be. Tip #11, use some positive in-game communication, right? Use some positive pings. The amount of, I can't tell you how many games I play where there's negative pings and I'm not even involved in it. It's my teammates having beef with each other, but it just affects me. Like I'm sitting there like, wow, our team's tilted at each other. We're likely not going to win. And you go into this loser's mentality. You go into this self-fulfilling kind of, well, the game is over before it's even started, right? We're at a disadvantage. Don't do that to your teammates. You can have your beef. Please, please, please be more positive when you're in-game, especially with your pings. Tip #12, understand the difference between attack and special attack. This is really important when you're putting your held items onto your characters. If you're not sure about this, there is a There's a website called Unite Database. I'm going to link it in the description. If you're using a Pokemon, make sure you understand the Pokemon before you're using it and have a look at a particular build. This leads me into tip number 13, which is understand your Pokemon's important power spikes. This one's a little bit more complex. The amount of people I see who, for example, they use Mew, but they don't understand Mew's level 13 is a really big power spike for Mew, right? Mainly for the cooldown reduction. So if you're using a Pokemon, understand whether it's attack, special attack, and what are the power spikes. This will inform you whether you're going to be pushing the enemy, or whether you're going to maybe try and get that little bit of extra farm to make sure you can hit that level before you engage in fight. Tip number 14, stop using Pokemon that require support in solo queue. These are Pokemon like Zoroark, Dodrio, just to name a few, maybe Tyranitar, right? These Pokemon that require the support, we need to stop using them, right? There are a few players who are fantastic at the game. It doesn't matter what they use, they're always going to be good. But for the typical solo queue player, I know you see someone like Overlord using Zoroark and just going absolutely mayhem. That's because he's in a 5-stack. He's not playing solo queue when he's doing his 150k consistently with that character. So please keep this in mind. A general rule of thumb to stick to is don't use these characters that require the support. Use something that can be self-sustaining. Tip number 15, learn to pan the map more often when you are scouting the enemy, right? Or just to get a general feel, or to utilize the vision that your teammates are providing, especially if you're using a character that has range, but it just even informs you of your positioning and where you want to be and where you want to be running, right? Pan the map, understand what's happening outside of your little scope of vision, and you're going to be doing some good things. Tip number 16, play support or defender. These classes have the highest win rate in Unite. Look at the data on Unite API, right? These Pokemon have consistently had the highest win rate percentages. So I'm generally a fan of, and there's never going to be a shortage, there's very rarely a shortage of people who are using a support or defend in solo queue. So generally these are actually picks that I quite like to use. Tip number 17, stop using speedsters. These Pokemon have the worst win rate overall, with the exception of Leafeon. However, I'm still not a huge fan of Leafeon. Number 18, use Pokemon that are strong early. My general rule of thumb are Pokemon that are decent at level 5 at the latest, right? I think level 6 is a little bit too late, because if you're using something like a Tyranitar in lane and you're up against something like an Espeon, that Espeon hits level 4, you're still a Larvitar, that Espeon's going to bully you, it's going to destroy you, it's going to make your life miserable. So just don't put yourself in that situation. Use Pokemon that are strong by level 5, because even if you go to the jungle and you go to gank a lane, you still want to make sure you're providing some value in your lane, not by being a pathetic Pupitar with a Dark Pulse that does, a little bit of damage. It might secure some bees, it definitely doesn't do any pressure. Tip number 19, stop dying for stacks, guys. This does my head in, right? Please don't die for stacks, especially if you're laning with your partner and they're holding an experience share. If you die, you're getting very minimal value out of that experience share. But a general rule of thumb, if you die for the stack, the enemy gets the experience off you. You're not there to secure the farm in lane. So you've given the enemy a whole lot of experience just for your, 12 attack stat or whatever it is that you're going for. In my opinion, not worth it unless if you're absolutely desperate for those stacks. Tip number 20, poke bushes to scout the enemies out. This is especially important at the Rayquaza fight. However, generally when you're going towards objectives, if there's bushes there, what I mean by poke is use your range skills to attack the bush, right? This might be a Solar Beam. This might be a Stealth Rocks from Crustle, whatever it is, right? Use your skill and hit the bush. You'll be surprised at how many enemies sit in the bush and they think they're invisible. You poke them out because you do some damage. So before they even engage in the fight, you already have the advantage. Tip number 21, stun the enemy out of their secure. This is probably more important if you're using something like a tank or a support. Your skills, some of them will stun. They'll provide some crowd control to enemy. Use these skills when the farm is getting low. You want to try and hit the enemy and stun them out. Tip number 22, stop fighting before the Rayquaza. The amount of games I've lost because my team gets wiped at 2 minutes 10 and then the enemy team goes and rips the Rayquaza and on 1v5 is just not good enough. General rule of thumb, once it hits 230, play it very safe. Go get your farm. Go get your unite move. Try and hit a power spike, right? Stop trying to fight the enemy at this time. Just wait 30 seconds. There's a big fight coming up. And if you fight and you lose it, then you're letting the enemy just walk away for free. And tip number 23, go to the bottom objective first. This is the most important tip, in my opinion. This will win you the most solo queue games. If you're able to secure that bottom objective, you'll be able to do good things and steamroll the game. So there you have it, 23 tips and tricks to win more solo queue games. Hopefully you're able to apply some of these and you can have a better time when you're grinding through the ladder.